Well, that's a typical everyday office situation. But we are in the middle of an information explosion. And the increasing sophistication of copying machines, typing facilities, stationery, makes it easy to produce huge numbers of documents and forms cheaply. Now, this can be invaluable in the day-to-day running of a business. But there is a need to ensure that we don't swamp ourselves in paper, just simply because the facilities exist. So let's start with Reprographics. There's no shortage of information about the equipment, but how can we keep it all in proportion? How can we keep going through all these piles and piles of brochures without getting a hernia ourselves? Well, let's try talking to Jeff Tyler. He's from BETA, the Business Equipment Trade Association. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi. Well, there are, as you say, 20 or 30 different types of office copiers and duplicators, and it'll take 2 or 3 programs to go through them. What I'd like to do, if we can, is to look at the most common processes. That is a wax stencil duplicator, an electrostatic copier, and an offset litho duplicator. Okay. Because these are the ones which are coming up today. We can best look at the machines, I think, and see how they go.
Let's go.
Fine. The wax stencil duplicator, this has been around for years, but it's a very common workhorse in every office. It's a comparatively inexpensive machine. Virtually any girl can operate it. You type out on a stencil here, on a wax stencil, without using a typewriter ribbon. Fix it in a grip, and as the drum turns, the ink inside it is forced out through the stencil onto the paper. Forced
through and the image comes out on the paper.
That's right. Yeah. So what you're limited to, in fact, is the type of paper you can use. You have to be fairly porous on it. And the quality, although it's perfectly satisfactory for office duplicating jobs, does leave a little bit to be desired, especially if you're doing prestige work and so on. But, you know, one can overcome these problems.
I imagine, too, that you can only use these so often, and they're very difficult to store.
Well, when you take that off, you can imagine that's ink all down there, pretty messy.
So, in fact, you throw it away?
One wouldn't normally store these. What I'd like to talk about is the electrostatic copier, and then on to the offset litho process, which is fast-making ground in offices as a duplicating process.
Okay,
if we can do that. We're going to take a few copies on this thing.
This is the electrostatic...
Yeah, the electrostatic copier can take copies from something which wasn't prepared for copying. This is somebody's catalogue page, that looks at things. Maggie, will you take a few copies of that for me, please, and show us how it goes? This works on an electrostatic principle. It magnetises the sensitised paper in there, and a dust adheres to the magnetised areas, hence the black image that comes out. But it's not, in fact, a photographic process.
No.
So the old photocopier term is out of date now. These come through one after the other. There's no need to wait for that copy to come out before we put this one in again.
This is the original. That's the copy.
The original. There's the copy. Now, why I wanted to demonstrate this first is to illustrate a link-up between this and the offset litho machine. So can we look at that now?
Yeah, sure.
And Meg, if you would, take this copy and use it as a master on the offset litho duplicator. What we're doing now is just lay it on the tray there. The machine will take it in and ink itself up and print however many copies we want. We can key in the necessary number of copies on here. As the paper goes through, it's lined up accurately on this tray here.
Right.
It's jogged into position, in fact, so the registration is pretty accurate.
Right.
I think you'll see when that comes off, the difference between that and its printed copy is pretty negligible. The number of copies one will take on here is pretty high, of course. You need to have a good daily volume to justify a machine of this kind of expense. But once you have that high volume, it's normally a cheaper process than most other duplicators.
Okay, let's see those.
Those are the two there, you see. Apart from a patch of slight lightness, you can't
You can hardly tell the difference between the original and the copy. But tell me, surely you don't have to have a master made on the electrostatic machine in order to make this work?
No, you can type a paper master out straight away on there. You put this in the typewriter with a particularly greasy ribbon.
Yeah. You're just demonstrating a link between
or an ordinary carbon ribbon, and you type straight on the master. And that'll run off again.
The reason why I might buy one of these as against the electrostatic machine, I assume, is because of volume once again.
Yeah, you wouldn't run, say, 200 copies on one of those machines normally.
No.
You would find it better to take one copy on there, say, if you needed to do that, and run them on here. Or to type in masters specifically to go on here. Or they'll take metal plates.
Well, Jeff, both of these machines are obviously quite expensive.
Yeah.
I imagine there must be sort of scaled-down versions of them.
Yeah,
right?
there are tabletop models of both of these. These are easier to demonstrate because of the size.
Yes.
You can get little tabletop offset litho machines, and you can get tabletop electrostatic copiers. And they're quite cheap. You can buy them, rent them, depends how you feel.
So once again, it's all a question of volume.
It's all a question of volume, yeah.
How would you sum up briefly your views on Reprographics?
Well, your main problem is to analyse your requirements, because although it sounds simple, you want to get a copy of a bit of paper, it's not necessarily that simple. The number of copies, the types of originals you're getting, you need to analyse those very accurately, because if you get the wrong machine, it's just a heap of scrap metal. It's no good to you. You know.
OK, well, thanks, Jeff.
Pleasure.
Well, so much for theory. Now for practice. What kind of a job is it running a reprographic unit? Well, we went down to Bristol, where the British Aircraft Corporation had to solve a king-size problem. The Concorde is due to make its first commercial flight with BOAC in 1975, and the whole project involves a complex piece of international cooperation. The manufacture of the engines is shared between Rolls-Royce in Britain and Snecma in France, and the construction of the airframe and final assembly are the joint responsibilities of the British Aircraft Corporation and Aerospatiale. And there are over 300 other companies deeply involved. A vast amount of technical data needs to be circulated among the various parties concerned for this project to be possible at all. Drawings, specifications, memos, letters and reports of all shapes and sizes. To cope economically with this flood of paperwork, BAC has set up what amounts to a factory within its main factory at Filton near Bristol.
Well, primarily we found that it was difficult to get drawings, and the reason for this was that a lot of the items, such as microfilming, the on-demand service, such as it was then, distributed about the factory, sometimes 2.5 miles from each other. And we found that by creating a production center along the same lines as we'd created a machining center and a tooling center, that we could bring these facilities together closer to engineering, where the original drawings were, and then coordinate our flow lines in order to produce this masses of drawings and documents that much quicker.
After the master copies have been made, the drawings are microfilmed. A 35mm planetary camera is used and up to 7 copies are made. Each copy is then inset into an aperture in a standard punch card. 1 copy of each aperture card remains in the Reprographics Centre. This small corner of it is in effect the on-demand drawing store for the Filton complex, with copies of over 100,000 drawings. Further copies of the cards can be made quite simply and sent direct to the user. When hard copy is needed, the appropriate card is selected and fed into this machine, which reverses the microfilming process. The microfilm image is rephotographed onto continuous stationery. The whole process only takes a few seconds before copies of the original drawings are ready for distribution. The concentration of facilities makes it economical to use fast, heavy-duty machines, not only for drawings, but also for copying reports and correspondence. The coordination of all this requires, firstly, a formal system of priorities.
The aircraft currently flying at Fairford obviously gets top priority because the grounding period is so vital in the flight test program. For production aircraft, there are certain areas where work needs to be done quickly and it could have fallen behind program. So certain code names are given to these very areas of work. This code name applies then throughout both the issue of the drawings and the demands. But the main fact is that it's no earthly good getting machinery that churns out masses and masses of paper if at the end your people have to fold and get rid of this paper, distribute it, and it just bogs them down. So the prime thing is that we don't always look for fast machines. The offset system that we're running, this normally prints at 9,000 an hour, but the actual production speed, printing and collating, is 2,000, or roughly 12,000 a day. So these are the aspects that We must constantly be looking at the new equipment, see how it fits in to do the job we want it to do, see how it affects people. And obviously you do get people worried if they think that the job itself or the machine itself is finally going to do them out of a job. We record our production every week. Supervisors give me their own weekly production returns. For instance, our drawings on demand service, we know the load we can accept to give the service. And this is given every week so I can analyze how we're doing in meeting the program. Bringing several small bodies of staff together allows you to be more flexible in your staff. Since setting up the centre, we've trained a lot of operators and clerks to do one another's job, so consequently, during holidays and sickness, it allows you to become flexible and move staff from one area to another and literally keep the job going. Our prime task is to give a service, particularly in the urgent needs of Concorde. We run an on-demand service for drawings, which allows us to give people drawings when they want them and not fill up libraries with stuff that they'll never use. We give a service generally for the short-run jobs, small amounts, so that people can have 10 now and not 50 tomorrow.
10 now and not 50 tomorrow. That sounds like a good motto for a reprographics manager, and it's an effective way, certainly, of containing the information explosion. What were the main points once again? First, you need a system of priorities so that you know which work is really urgent. Second, if you're using fast machines, remember that people must be able to keep up with them. Third, set production targets and keep regular records of output so that you can see whether the targets have been met, and if not, why not. Do not accept excessive demands without question. Just try the 10 now and not 50 tomorrow approach. Centralisation for BAC meant that it became economical to use big, sophisticated machines and that staffing arrangements became flexible. But centralisation is not always the answer. Each organisation has got to make its own mind up. We'll be talking about centralisation and decentralisation as general concepts in a later programme. But now, from reprographics, let's go to typing. Because another good way of generating piles of paperwork is to use a typewriter and some carbon paper. Now, Gloria Neal's done a lot of work for the Industrial Society in this field, so let's start from square one. Gloria, why do we need to type it all?
Yes, Jack. Well, every organisation has to commit certain things to paper. It's no longer viable, obviously, to do this by hand, so we turn to machines, and we have typists and typing and secretarial services generally.
Well, one of the problems I often have as a manager is deciding who needs a secretary. How do I work that out?
That's a good question. Really, secretarial help should be based on the specific needs of a company. The backup services should be based on the requirements rather than on things like status.
What do you mean backup services? Are you referring to typing pools?
Well, in this case, not specifically, although that obviously is a backup service. But what I have in mind is a group of typists and secretaries who are geared to providing a specific service to managers. For instance, one organisation has a division which provides a secretarial service to 45 to 50 managers, and they call it a secretarial bureau. It's headed by a senior secretary who's also the group leader, which means she supervises the bureau. Under her, she's got 4 secretaries, each of whom works to 2 managers. Under the 4 secretaries, we've got 4 audio typists who also provide a general audio typing service, and then at the bottom we've got a junior clerk.
Don't you find there's a loss of communication because they're slightly disassociated from the 50 managers?
In this particular case, not at all. In fact, the advantages are that the girls are more involved with the work. This allows for flexibility because if one is sick or the holidays and so on, there's interchange and they all know the work of the division.
There's also, obviously, it seems to me, an advantage in that a girl can follow a career pattern, in as much as she can at least go up the various levels of the bureau.
Yes, indeed.
What future trends do you see beyond this sort of bureau system for secretarial workers?
Well, I think that we are in the immediate short term, we're going to see more concentration by companies on effective services geared to need. wants, rather than the manager needing a secretary. We're going to look at what sort of workload he copes with, and he may well be able to just use half a secretary. In the long-term future, I think the middle-of-the-road secretary shorthand typist is going to disappear, because with more automation and, for instance, automatic typewriters, I think we're going to have the girl at the bottom end who is technically highly skilled, and at the other end, the personal assistant, for instance, someone like the product of the Strathclyde degree course.
Now, tell me more about the Strathclyde degree course.
Well, this is basically a 3-year course. It gives general secretarial studies, but it does specialise in one area. So, for instance, if a girl wants to end up in industry, she can take industrial relations as a specialist subject, which means that she will have an enormous knowledge of the management and executive work.
Well, very briefly, Gloria, a chancy question. What extra training would you give managers?
Oh, I'd give them a lot of training, because I think they've got to start looking at the way they put out their work and the way that they use the secretarial and typing services so that they do it most efficiently and economically.
They're the ones who create the paper.
Yes, indeed, and quite often too much paper.
Thank you, Gloria. Well, we've looked at reprographics and typing services and how to prevent ourselves being flooded with unnecessary paper. But what does the paper itself actually consist of? Well, an awful lot of it consists of forms. Now, we have just 2 minutes to talk about form design. Only an idiot would attempt to talk about form design in 2 minutes. I'm going to talk on form design. Now, when you are designing forms, obviously and logically, they've got to be designed so that you can fill them in, so they can be easily read, and these days, with the computer coming in more and more, so that the information can be punched. But there are obviously special considerations for forms. After all, a form that's going to be prepared for reproduction is quite different from a form that has to be prepared for typing. Now, Jeff, what special considerations will we use for a form that was eventually going to be reproduced?
Well, an idiot's guide is to consult the manufacturer of the machine, because even the type of paper can be limited. You've got gripper edges, for example. You've got certain areas which can only accept a certain amount of detail, perhaps around the edges. Let the manufacturer know what you're trying to do. You won't catch a cold that way, you know.
And paper weight is often an essential
Paper weight,
thing.
paper quality, paper thickness. Airmail paper, for example, provides problems for some machines. You won't necessarily know that unless you ask the guy who gave you the machine.
OK, thank you, Jeff. Gloria, what have I got to do to my form to make certain that your people can type on it?
Well, even with the best modern typewriters, it's difficult to type at the very end of a piece of paper. So form designers should make sure that they leave a good space at the bottom so the typist doesn't lose the grip of the paper in the roller. Secondly, avoid too many lines, because if she's got to worry about lining up, it's time-consuming, it's less efficient.
OK, thank you, Gloria. Well, now, the other thing about forms is beware of putting in unnecessary information. And once the information is on there, do a periodical check to make certain that information is still required. You know, the trouble is most of us don't think about forms. It's the sort of thing we leave to our junior staff. We regard it much the same as calculating the wages. Now, there are lots of very good books on form design, and I think most of us should read one or two. In fact, you might start off with ours. We have a book called Office, which is a book on administrative management, that is going out with this series. One of the things about forms is, it's not just a question of how many copies, but how many copies of what? So that's it, 2 minutes on form design. And in this program, we've been talking about paper in bulk. But don't let us forget that the purpose of all this paper is to communicate something useful. If it doesn't, throw it away.